Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Gelvin Valley for Farm Sim 15, a beautiful map made by Wild Wild Wes. This time it appears I have one of my mods over there, or not my mod, just a mod that's installed, Trusty Sheep. As soon as you step out of the tractor, the sheep comes running to try to find you. So there it is, coming up to inspect what we're doing with its nice pasture up here. Maybe before I continue on this, there's something I wanted to share. I was going to do it last time and I forgot. So let me just. Here it is, this mod worksheet. And this is going to make my friend Atomic67 probably. I don't want to be irreverent. This is something he told me not to do. But I went ahead and did it anyway because I think it could be of use. I sometimes get asked which mod I'm using, whether it's in a comment or someone reaching out. And so what I did is I went through my mods folder, including the DLCs, and this took me forever and a day to do this, but I went ahead and made a record of it. For example, line 23 here, this is on my Google Drive, and I'm going to try to start putting this in the information area of my videos as to the mod using FS15 tab. I do some other play too, and I'll try to update it for any of them that would appear in a video. So obviously we're on the Gelvin Valley map, and I tried to identify the name of the file, the type of mod that it is, the name, the map author, the version, kind of a description of what it is, and then over here, this part was extremely painful. I'm not sure why I have yellow highlights on here. I tried to find a source for where these mods can be downloaded. Even today, I did all this probably a couple months ago. I can't remember exactly. But these are current locations where if you wanted to, you could download these mods and try them out for yourself. I also put something in here that indicates whether I modified them further or not. So I tried to note some of those here, what those are like on here. I added a script to reduce bale sliding, flatten some areas just a little bit so it wouldn't be quite as bumpy, etc., etc. So some of the mods that I use are going to behave a little bit differently than they will for you if you choose to download them. But just want to let you know I was going to put these in here. I know my good friend Atomic suggested that I don't do this. For a while I had some. I know I'm in another series that I had for Farm Sim 17 on the Lone Oak map. I had a list of the mods, and basically all I did was call them here. Just the names of files because people were asking, what they were. And I know his thought always was, he didn't want people watching him just to come and get the mods. Well, I'm not too worried about that. You want the mods, you're welcome to them. I can't give you my copy of the mod because it's changing what someone else has put out there, but I could at least share with you what I'm using and try to get you a source so you can go get it yourself. Some of them, of course, are going to cost some money, whether it's a gold pack or the pack that the Giants created. Those you'll need to purchase through the Giants. But many of these others, they're just freely available if you know where to find them on the web. And I tried to take as many legitimate sources as I could. And by legitimate, I'm talking the forums where modders group up and collaborate and share their mods and release them. But it is really, really hard, especially this long after the fact, to get original links, some of which they just flat out don't exist anymore. But where I could, I put in original links here so anybody can download them and find them. And also sometimes I'm asked, well, where can you find Farm Sim 15 mods? You know, it's a pretty old game, and maybe it's getting a little tougher, but there are still some active sites, including the giants themselves. You know, this is on www.farming-simulator.com. This is the Giants' own mod hub, and maybe many people wouldn't even realize they still carry mods for all previous versions. At least maybe back to a certain point. I don't know when they started carrying mods. Maybe it was Farm Sim 15, maybe it was 13. But if you know how to get in there and set up, and I think this link is set up that it would take you there to the Farm Sim 15 mod area. You know, if you go there and just type it in the regular mod hub, it's only going to show you Farm Sim 22 mods. And I think there's a button you can click on that'll give you Farm Sim 19 mods. But you might say, well, how do I find those for 17 and 15? It's like, well, you need to know kind of how to get in there, because I don't think their site is set up to just share or show that to you. So I tried to provide a few links here where I know there are some sites that still have 15 mods. The one I really wish I could share, but I can't because the site is down, is, you know, good old FS UK. That was a major site back in the day, had many wonderful Farm Sim 15 mods. Matter of fact, Gelvin Valley that we're playing on was released through FSUK back in the day. But that's been closed, and there's been some other closures as well. It's really kind of sad. A lot of those neat places where modders were born, if you will, and mods were created, they simply don't exist anymore, and I don't know if it's the cost of setting up a forum or maintaining it. They just don't have it. I know American Eagles modding, that's another one that's kind of focused on American stuff. It's still open, as are some of these other. I think Modding Welt is German, so make sure you brush up on your German if you visit that one or use Google Translate. And maybe some of these others are also German. If I find additional sites, I'll definitely try to put them on. But anyway, at least wanted to mention the ad once in these videos, that if you're interested in any of those mods that you see me using or whatever, and are interested in checking this map out yourself, I know it's an old game, but it's a good map. And to me, I know I've said this before, it's always been about the map and what kind of a world is on the map. Let me see here. It's admin. Yep. Let me just put that on there. Let me get this bad boy going, and we will continue working on our field number. Oh, that's a massive stone. Kind of sitting in a funny angle too. We're gonna have a bunch of rocks to pick up as we work our way up this slope. And kind of the premise was, it's been a long time since it was last worked. So especially on this slope over here, as you see, we're pulling out a whole bunch of rock, which sometimes happens on the farm, especially on slopes. Well, I say especially. Maybe it depends on the region of the world that you're in. But we're pretending on this one that it's a pretty rocky area. So, oh, there's another rock. That's a little flatter one. Yeah, I love seeing kind of the different shapes that are coming out. Anyway, in the last episode, before we terminated, I realize I'm running low on fuel. I'll need to go fill that at some point. But I was sharing about a mod that I've been spending quite a bit of time trying to get it to work. Boy, this is steep. Look at that. See, this is what happens when you're on a slope. It's with the GPS. I think it's designed to be on the flat. Alright, let's do this again. I'll reduce the work width. One more time. See if I can keep this in between. I'm going to have to go down here, else this is going to be there for into perpetuity. I gotta get it ripped out, or it's... There we go. If I can see over this tree. I think I mentioned previously, I think in real life this tractor would find this quite challenging to be pulling these heavy shanks up a hill kind of like this. Oh, and there's another beautiful rock. But I was talking about this mod, this placeable fire mod, which someone else created, and I've kind of just used it on my own, and I've been spending quite a bit of time on it, trying to get it to work and behave like a real fire. And I think last episode where I kind of left off was talking about the damage that it would do. It takes out your equipment, not right away, but if it's sitting there long enough, it'll burn it up and, either change the color of it, damage it somehow, or turn it into a brick. I don't think you can even enter it, so you have to deal with it. You might have to hire a loader to literally haul it off and junk it, sell it, whatever. But it is intended to cause damage and cause some significant headache to the player when it happens. And then I was talking about how it would, kind of the damage that it would do on the ground. There we go. Make sure there's enough. You can see up here the working width is obviously small enough that it should take it all in, but I know it behaves differently when it gets down on that slope. But anyway. So on the fire, it's working in conjunction with the chopped straw mod, and I created a different kind of chopped straw, if you will, that only gets called up by the fire, and it's a blackened type straw, and it literally puts down scorched earth, if you will. It'll just be coal black. And at some point I'll have a video. It takes a lot of effort to do a modding video to kind of showcase all the work that's been done and to have it make sense. It's much easier just to come in here and kind of rattle off a few things and not even show any pictures. But at some point I hope to share a video kind of that shows how it behaves and what it does to the ground. But suffice it to say, it hopefully adds just a little bit more realism for how a fire would be. And I think I've already mentioned kind of some of the means of putting it out, whether it's pulling a cultivator or plow through it, using water with a fire engine, or even a cloud burst. If it rains, it's gonna eventually put every fire out on the map and make them go away. But in terms of damage, the frustrating thing, or something, I say frustrating, let's just call it a limitation, if you will, that you couldn't do in Farm Sim 15 that you would probably be able to handle now in Farm Sim 22 is damage to surrounding buildings. So if you have a fire in a building, obviously it's going to eventually wipe out the building. It's going to burn the thing down to the rafters, and you'll be left with, just a scorched pile of timbers. Well, it's pretty hard to do that in here, and maybe if I was smart enough, you could search out the objects on the map. All of these things down to the lowliest fence post is an object, and you can eventually find them. But one of the things I've learned working with this fire is it is very resource intensive. So when it is burning, the FPS suffers and it slumps a little bit. And so when it's running through its paces and calculations, figuring out what to damage, finding equipment, finding objects, and whatever, it takes a lot of resources. And so one limitation it's going to have is, if this fire starts in your barnyard or inside your barn, it's not going to take it out your barn or any other buildings. Maybe a placeable of some kind, if it's something the player placed on the map that is searchable through the regular equipment, if you will, in the save file, maybe it'll take that out. But if it's something that the mapper put in place, it isn't going to take that out. So, because in theory, you could destroy everything. The house, the road, you look over there, that electrical, those pylons over there, it could destroy those. Well, by time you do all that, and then if you tried to save it, it just becomes a headache if you try to save your progress so that when the player, oops, returns, that, everything destroyed previously is still destroyed. It just becomes a nightmare, at least to me. Like I say, I'm sure there's someone out there smart enough to figure it out. It just becomes too much to figure out how to do it and how to do it in a resource effective way. In terms of non-equipment, non-object items that are saved, I vacillated for a while to say, should it also impact trees? Well, as we all know, there is such a thing as forest fires, and of course trees get damaged all the time when fires happen. So eventually I said, you know what, I got to give it a try. Because, when a player cuts down a tree, the game obviously remembers it. It remembers it in a different way, a different file format that's always been hard, at least for me, to deal with or mod with. So, but after a significant amount of work, I figured out a way to deal with it. And it basically, what it involves is, like, you see this tree right here. I don't even know what kind of tree this is. Is this an ash? Ash tree? Whatever it is. It has its own file, and so what I did is, like, the tree is going to stay intact, but if a fire comes by, the trunk is going to be black or blackened, and all the foliage is going to be removed, so that all you see is just a mere shadow of, what it was previously. And so what it does is, if there is a fire next to a tree, or a tree is in range, after a certain period of time, it removes the live tree and replaces it with a dead one. And it, like I say, eventually I'll have a video where I go into more details on this, but it basically involved creating some new tree types, that looks at the existing size, replaces it with the same size, but a blackened version. And it's basically, although the player doesn't know it, it's a brand new type of tree, if you will, where there's less wood chips. I mean, you can still go in and cut the tree down if you want. You can still harvest it for wood chips, but you're not going to get near as much as you would have previously, because presumably it's been damaged, by the fire. So I'm pleased with how it's working, but this is something too. It obviously takes a ton of resources to do, as it parses through, it's called the root node, finding trees, finding which ones are close to the fire so they can be destroyed, and then, dealing with all those, uprooting them, and that kind of thing. Oh, and then there's other objects. We're cranking out all sorts of objects even as we sit here and run this hillside here with our ripper, and we're digging up all these rocks. Well, as we all know, rocks aren't destroyed by fire, so there were some objects that I had to say to the code, hey, don't destroy these. So if you see a rock object or a placeable rock of some kind, leave those alone, don't touch them. It isn't going to touch, like you see at the end of this fence row up here, there's bushes kind of along the fence. It isn't going to do anything to those per se. But anyway, it's like I know I've said this before, but there's tentacles. When you set out to try to mod something and get it to behave sort of realistically, there's all sorts of things that just come to mind, and problems that you run into along the way to try to get it to behave like how a fire behaves in real life. And it ain't easy. I think I described kind of at the get-go, it's basically a placeable. So in theory, the player could buy it or place it from the shop. You could do that, and it would have all these features, and it would spread and do all that. Or it could start, behind a baler or the combine. Um, it will do all those things, but when it spreads, what it's basically doing is it's generating new versions of itself. So, like right where we're at, if let's pretend we were a fire, I know we're a tractor, but if we wanted a new fire to represent spreading, you basically have north, south, east, and west. I think I kept it that simple. Maybe it went on the diagonal. I don't remember. Northeast, northwest, those kinds of things. So it would check all those spots and it would see if there was a fire there currently. And if there wasn't, it would see if it's an area it can burn, meaning, if it's dirt, it isn't going to let you, uh, put a fire there. So it runs through all these things. And if it looks like a good area, it will put down a replica of itself, namely another placeable fire. And it just does this over and over. Now you got a new file, it's going to do the same, or a new placeable, it's going to do it again. It's going to check around itself and say, can I put another placeable fire somewhere around myself? And if there's already a fire, or if it's something that isn't going to burn, what is it going to put it down? But that's kind of how it slowly, I say slowly, right now it's fast, but that's how it spreads out and impacts other areas. So, and right now, like I say, it runs some timers to see, well, how soon can I spread the fire? So that's one of the things I'm going to have to work with, because the player has to have the ability, hopefully, to be able to put the fire out. And so that's kind of something I'm working on. Right now, it just spreads way too fast. There's no way to get ahead of it. And so sometimes, if I want to personally put it out and start over, I just start a rain shower, and that puts it all out and helps. So, but the player really needs to have an ability to be able to put it out. Otherwise, it's kind of cool effect to have a fire in there, but if all it does is burn up your entire map, well, I could see where that wouldn't exactly be fun or exciting on the long haul either. So I've been spending a lot of time on that, and it isn't totally multiplayer compatible. I don't know if I'll do that. I'm probably the only one that's going to use it. Really, I would need to contact several modders to ask permission to release it anyway. And the fire isn't mine. I didn't make those textures. There was a script that came with it. I didn't write that script. I've modified it heavily to where it bears little resemblance, to how it was before. Really the script that they had was to... How come this isn't picking up? There we go. The script that they had, I think it affected the color of the smoke of the fire, to where if you wanted, you could turn it white smoke or black smoke. You could turn the fire on or off. If you stood at a certain spot, there was a player trigger you could stand on. And it still has some of that in there. But, it basically took it from, some code that was, 150 lines. And I think it's over 1,000 now. With just all these other things I've been trying to build into it. But I would still, if I wanted to release it, need to get permission, from these other modders, because they're the original ones that created it, and there's several of them. Some of them I think are gone from the scene, so I wouldn't even know how to get a hold of them. And some of this is, what they call modder etiquette. And I don't know what the right thing to do is. It's kind of like when I started this video, and I mentioned I tried to find original links for as many of these mods as I could. But the reality is a lot of those original links, they flat out no longer exist. They just don't. Because sites have closed, modders have left the scene, and I know it's a big deal to most modders, whether it's pride or what it is, or the ability to service a mod. They want to have control of where it's released. And I get the ad, and I've tried to respect it, but I do wonder if, modders as a group need to talk about this somehow, and I wouldn't have any idea how to facilitate it. Is there a statute of limitations, if you will? Now that we're on FarmSim 15 and it's a very old version, do modders still care what somebody or anybody does with their mods? I suspect they still care quite a lot, and wouldn't want someone treating them, um, or wouldn't want them to be mistreated, and would still like credits to be maintained and that sort of thing. But people are so different, and modders are no different with that. Some people, they don't care what you do with their mod, as long as you leave their name in the credit and you give a history of the credits and you provide information on what you did to their mod. And some of them you don't even have to talk to them. They don't care. As long as you put that in there, they're good. Other people don't care, period. You can do anything you want. It's a game. And then there's others where if you release a modded version of their mod, they would prefer to have some say in that, and permissions. And it's kind of a mixed bag. Some I've talked to have readily given permission and are appreciative of the ad, and there's others that I've run into that say, no, we would prefer you didn't do that. And whatever they say, I try to respect it, as a fellow modder in the game. So all that to say is, I don't think the work I did on the placeable fire, it's probably not something I'm going to be able to release, and probably, who cares, right? I mean, this is an old game, so probably nobody wants it anyhow. But depending if I can get it multiplayer compatible, maybe it's something I could bring to later versions of FarmSim, and maybe it's only a matter of time. Like I say, somebody created a fire mod for FarmSim 22, and it's probably just a matter of time before someone takes that one and says, hey, let's make this fire spread, make it do damage, trees, objects, whatever, kind of some of all the things, that I've mentioned in here. So who knows what'll happen. But anyway, I kind of think I have chowdered up another half hour. Maybe? I can't really tell. I'm out of practice, and I should be paying attention to the clock. I used to have a running timer here sitting beside me. My dear friend, Atomic67, mailed me. He bobbed me a timer. I'm sitting here right by my desk, and I keep forgetting to turn the thing on. It's one of those dingers. It's a cow, and you twist the top, and then set it for 30 minutes. And probably, if you listen real close, you could hear the tick, tick, tick of it. Maybe people think there's a bomb going off or something. So I probably need to press that into service. The trouble with it is when it dings, it usually scares the pants off of me, and it's quite a jolt. So, but I think I'm at the end of a half an hour, and I'm just realizing as I look at this, we're making progress on this field, but it is one big bruiser of a field. So, but we're getting the job done. So, assuming I'm through half an hour, I think I'll terminate the video here. Just want to say thank you for anybody that's stuck around and give me some of your day and watch this. I really appreciate it, and hope you enjoy it. And if you have any comments, I'd love to read those. But have a wonderful day wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye for now.